Hey, Dr. Dolly. This is a pretty non-traditional question, but I'm currently a resident and I'm thinking about proposing to my girlfriend at some point. And I was wondering, how much should someone in my position spend on a ring? Now, tradition says that we should spend approximately 3 months of one's income on an engagement ring. And as a resident, I rake in, let's say, $60,000 a year. So 3 months of that would be $15,000. That's a lot of money, especially for someone on a resident salary. Now, obviously, I want to invest in the person I love. I want to get something that both she and us are, proud of together. So I'm just curious, like, do you have any guidance as to how much one in a resident's position should spend on a ring? And also, is a ring really even considered a financial investment? Obviously, it's something that is an investment into our future together, but since it is a financial podcast, is it something that we should consider as a financial investment as well? Since I would be potentially contributing a lot of money towards it. Thanks.
All right. Great question. You want to answer this one first, Disha? Let's hear your take on it, and then I'll give my take.
Yeah, I would definitely. If I were buying a ring for someone, I would start with what they wanted rather than the dollar amount. I would take them to the store, kind of get an idea of what they actually want. It's like funny story. My husband bought me this awesome rock right here, several rocks, um, and he actually sold his motorcycle to do it. I mean, what a wonderful gesture! The fact that he lives longer because he's not on a motorcycle anymore, and and he gives me a ring. But honestly, when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, not my favorite ring." But that's okay because I love him and I'm gonna accept it no matter what. But I would have, I generally would have preferred like a really super duper simple ring, not that expensive ring, because honestly, all these like crevices in the ring make me nervous that there's bacteria in there that I'm carrying around from patient to patient. I'm pretty, I'm pretty uh, uh, cognizant of all the germs, especially these days. So I'm trying to like wash this thing in peroxide, several times a month. But it really stresses me out, honestly, to be wearing this much money and this much bacteria potential on my hand. So I tend not to wear it. So I would, I just wear my wedding ring. But yes, I would talk to your potential spouse, your person, and just take him to a store. And you know what? Girls kind of like a heads up anyway. So that's what I would do.
You say 3 months salary. I've never heard that before. It used to be 2 months salary. I don't know when that changed, but that's a guideline. And keep in mind who that comes from, right? This isn't coming from some sort of sensible place. This is coming from the diamond industry, right? From the jewelers. That's who comes up with this stuff, right? This is not some sort of required purchase. You do not have to buy this. And it's not an investment in the person. It's not, I'm investing in this for some sort of return down the road. That's not the way it works. It's a sign of commitment. It's a sign of love, but it's not some sort of investment you should expect a monetary return on. That if you spend $30,000 on a ring, you're somehow going to have a better marriage than if you spend $5,000 on a ring. That's just not the way it works. So let's not think
Yeah,
of this as an investment to start with.
I totally agree. An investment is something that brings you cash into your pocket, either now or later. But this is not going to do that. If the person likes you, they're going to marry you, right? It doesn't matter what kind of ring you give them. But it would be great, I'm sure, that if they had some sort of a clue as to what they were going to be wearing on their hand for the rest of their life. So, I think, yeah, let's definitely separate investment from cost. This is definitely an expense. That's okay. It's a great expense to have. Just be cognizant of your budget and make sure you know what they want.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like anything. Lots of people borrow tons of money to have a wedding. I think that's a terrible way to start out a marriage with all kinds of debt hanging over your head. Same thing. Lots of people borrow
Absolutely.
money to buy a ring. I think that's a terrible idea to have a bunch of debt hanging over an engagement. So I would
Yeah.
say a lot of it depends on how much cash you have. If you got all kinds of cash, you're
Right.
this attending physician with all your ducks in a row, you can spend all kinds of money on a ring. If you're in the situation I was in when we got married, you probably shouldn't spend that much, right? I mean, I wasn't even graduated yet from college. Here I am donating plasma for grocery money, right? No, I'm not going to go spend $15,000 on a ring. I think what I spent was probably 2,500. Now, granted, it's been over 2 decades, so you got to apply some sort of inflation figure to that. It was a nice ring at the time, but it wasn't some huge rock that you would expect somebody to have. That was marrying a doctor, for instance. And so, but I did what this just suggested, right? This was not a surprise when I asked my wife to marry me, right? I mean, maybe how I did it was a surprise. It ended up being on the ice between periods of a college hockey game. But that's a story for another day. But the fact that the question was coming was no surprise. We've been talking about marriage for months, right? We've been talking about everything you can imagine about marriage to try to be prepared for it. And so it wasn't a surprise that the question was coming. And so she went with me when we went to the store, right? And she got to pick out what she liked. Still has it today. And up until the time she sprained that finger and can't actually get it over her knuckles, she wore it all the time. But that's kind of the way that wedding rings go. And so try to inject some common sense into the situation. You don't necessarily want to cheap out on something like this, right? I mean, typically this is something that gets shown off to friends, and it's an important thing. So you don't want to have some terrible ring, but at the same time, use some logic in the situation. It's interesting these days. I keep hearing these advertisements on the radio of trying to decide whether to use a mined diamond, which may have some ethical implications apparently because people don't treat diamond mined workers very well in some parts of the world, versus I guess they're growing them now in labs. And so I'm not sure which one's considered more valuable. I suspect the lab grown one is cheaper and maybe even prettier, but not as authentic. So you've got that dilemma to sort out at the jewelers too. But maybe that's a place you can save a few bucks and have a better looking ring anyway. I don't know. That's about all the
You know
advice
what?
I've got for you on that subject. 15 grand seems like a lot for a resident to spend on a ring, though. I'll be honest.
That's crazy. I think most people spend about 3,000 if you're looking for like a number. But funny story, actually, Josh and I are gonna go shop for a simpler ring for me this year because it's our 10 year. So
Ah, very
there.
cool. So there's always,
Just
there's always
yeah,
the opportunity to upgrade this thing. I don't know what they call it, an anniversary ring or something. You can always get a
yeah.
nicer ring later. So don't feel like this only has to be a one-time purchase. Keep it reasonable. I don't know that I'd say 3,000. That feels like maybe not all that much these days, but I'd say less than 10 if you're a resident anyway. That seems like a lot to spend more than that to me. But good luck with
Yeah.
your decision. It's your money, and I would try to buy it with cash. Just the act of saving up for it or selling your motorcycle or something to get it, I think reflects significant commitment to the marriage and to your partner. And so I like that idea. If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.
The hosts of the White Coat Investor podcast are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is free entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.